So I just gotten done with a recent speedrun that I was doing. I've been working on the pacifist speedrun in D2R. But while we were going through it, somebody at one point said they always have difficulty getting through Act 3. They don't know how to run it quickly. It's always a problem. And there's a lot of videos out there. What I would like to do, which is a little bit different. I just got done running this Act 3 for this speedrun. I've revealed part of the map. And something that I think that might be beneficial is me just explaining my thought process for how I ran through the map. Because while I can explain to you like what you need to be thinking about, not showing it in real time is very challenging, right? It's difficult to conceptualize of what you need to do versus what's actually happening at any given moment. So I've already run through this map. I'm going to run through the jungle of these maps and explain my thought process as I was running through them. The big thing that you need to know is that there are 3 sections, right? There's Spider Forest, Great Marsh, and Flayer Jungle. Spider Forest typically leads into Great Marsh, and typically that leads into Flayer Jungle. I say typically because you can actually skip Great Marsh altogether. There are plenty of map construction pieces where you don't actually have to go through the Great Marsh because the Spider Forest attaches to the Flayer Jungle. And since there's nothing in the Great Marsh for you to do, you don't have to run through it. I'm going to explain a couple different concepts, which is basically the idea of a tile. So we're sitting on the first tile of the Spider Forest. It's this whole section right here. It's basically before this bridge, down is 1 tile for all intents and purposes. Spider Forest, the Great Marsh, and the Flayer Jungle are all 2 sets of 6 tiles. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the left of it, or to the right of it, depending, go 1, 2, 3, 4. So as you can see, this is tile 1, this is tile 2, and this is tile 2 of the other lane. So just try to conceive of that. If these are the 2 lanes of the Spider Forest, this is tile 1. There is no tile 1 on this side because the start of the map is always like this. This is tile 2, and this is also tile 2. We'll call this one A, we'll call that one B. Like I said, there are a ton of videos that cover all of this in excruciating detail. I'm just going to show you how I ran through it, and I'm going to be counting out loud and talking about what tiles I go to in the decision making as I went through this map. And I hope that this can help to better conceptualize it for some people who need it in real time to be shown what's happening, as opposed to just getting the diagrams and trying to fit it together yourself. I'm going to run through it as a regular character as well. First off, this is the river. The river is the thing that splits the tiles. You typically want to be on the left side of the river. So the top over here, the one closest to the top, this is the left, this is the right. The reason why you want to be on the left most often is because there are typically either entrances to your camps, this is a camp, or you'll have to run by on this side because the other side will be blocked. So we leave tile 1, I ran up to tile 2. I know that I'm in tile 2 because I get past the middle point bridge right here. This river design, there are a lot of different river designs. You can intuit a lot of information based off of what you're seeing on the river, but I know I want to run on the left side. There's this big bush over here, and I know that there's going to be an entrance to a camp. Impossible. This is the entrance of a camp. You know that it's the entrance of a camp because it has 2 pillars with 2 braziers outside, and there's typically monsters and then a stone pathway that leads into it. Because while I'm speedrunning, I know that I need to get into the Spider Cavern to be able to go get the Eye of Kaleem. I need to get into the Flayer Dungeon to be able to get the Brain, and then I need to get into the sewers to go get the Heart. I want to go into these camps because I need to see if the Spider Cavern is there. So I'm on tile 2, this is tile 2B. I'm gonna go into the camp, which is tile 2A. Little speedrunner tip, if you leave a town portal right here, when you walk into here, if you find out that the waypoint is here, it is almost always faster to go into that waypoint and then go back down through your town portal to keep running. That's just like a little min-max tip if you're ever thinking about like why you see people doing that when they're streaming sometimes. This camp style right here, I'm not gonna explain every single camp style because it wouldn't do you any good. You have to like sit down and actually study them all. I know that there's an exit through the top of this that's going to continue on to the 3rd tile of the Spider Forest. So if I'm in 2A, this will go to 3A. And I want to go up to there because the third tile of any map is really, really important. So let's walk up there and I'll explain why. So we come walking out of our camp, and here, for people who are putting together the puzzle pieces quite literally, you know that the river would be continuing up this way. We know that there is more spider forest to explore over here because the river always attaches. It's always one continuous piece through an area. And since I went over to a camp over here, walking up here, I know that this lane still has to be over here, right? This would be tile 3B. I know this has to be here because at least one part of the river is going to make a straight path. So I come walking up to the third tile. The fact that there's anywhere to run over here at all means that this is a new section. It's either the Great Marsh or the Flayer Jungle. Why do I know that? The Spider Forest, the Great Marsh, and the Flayer Jungle are made up of 2 lanes of 6 tiles. A third tile can't fit into that paradigm. That shape can't happen. It's always a rectangle that's 2 blocks wide and 6 blocks long. So the fact that there's anything over here at all means that that is a new map that I could run into. I'm going to explore over there to see if it's the Great Marsh or the Flayer Jungle. The reason why it can be either is because on the third tile of your map, so again, 1, 2, 3, split up by the little bridges. This is the third tile. On the third tile, the 5th tile, or the 6th tile, you can connect to a new area. So if I was on tile 2, I don't need to go over here and explore anything, because this will just be the other side of the river. I know that Spider Forest can only be 2 tiles wide, and on tile 2, it can't connect to a new area. So there would never be a connection point over here. You physically could not fit it there. When I first said that it typically goes Spider Forest, Great Marsh, Flayer Jungle, that's accurate. The more accurate statement is that the Great Marsh either has to attach at the same point or before the Flayer Jungle. So if this is the Great Marsh over here, there's a chance that tile 3 over here would connect to the Flayer Jungle. So if I see the Great Marsh, that's good to know, and then I would keep moving on. So let's run over there. As you can see right here at this bridge, if you notice, this is the difference in a tile. This is still the Spider Forest. This is now the Great Marsh. Really try to hone in on this idea of these bridges splitting up the tiles. But here we go. We see that we have the Great Marsh. That means I don't need to go over here yet. The Flayer Jungle can connect later on, or like I said, it could connect at the same tile, but down to the bottom right. This is bottom right. This is top left. This is top right. That's bottom left if you've never watched any of my other videos. Because I know the marsh is here, there are still 3 more places where the Flayer Jungle can connect. On tile 3, just on the other side, up at tile 5, or at tile 6. So I don't want to explore this at all. I want to run back and see if there are other options for us. And that's what I did during this speedrun. Now, better speedrunners than I have memorized more of the river tiles. I actually had to go check this river tile to make sure that it wasn't one of the options where there could be a connection point. So I crossed this bridge, and hopefully these raptors get out of my way. But I crossed the bridge and I got to here. If you were to explore this more, you'll notice that, like I said, there was nothing over here. And if I go down here, there was nothing over here. Remember when I said you want to be on the left side or the top side of the river? This is why. This would have been blocked off. I would have ran up to here, realized it was blocked, and had to run around. So again, you want to stay on the left side. Nothing can connect to the second tile. I know there's nothing connected to the third tile. So it's either 5th tile, 6th tile, or I need to actually go run through the Great Marsh. If this is my 3rd tile, this is my 4th tile. You'll notice we have the exact same shape here. So right here, we had the little bend in the river, we had the big bush right here, and we had the entrance to the camp. So as I come running up here, I have this bend in the river, I have this big bush here. I know we have a camp up here as well. So let's go explore that. I see my camp because I have my 2 pillars and the 2 braziers. There are monsters outside of it and the stone walkway going in. And as I come into here, I see my waypoint. The waypoint is always next to the arachnid layer. The arachnid layer is never the spider cavern, so you never need to go in here if you're looking for the organs to get through Act 3. But like I said, just to show you, it's really good to use your waypoint and then actually come back down to here, and you would have traveled a further distance than trying to run down here in the same amount of time. So this is tile 4. Again, I don't have to worry about checking out this other side, and I don't need to check over here either. This is never going to connect to our Flayer jungle. There's never going to be a connection point over here. I'm going to go up to the 5th tile. As we're running up here, we have the bridge, but I want to stay on the left side, right?
Impossible.
Again, the more experience you get with this, you'll be able to identify these tiles more easily, or these bends in the river. But the fact that the river is blocked off on this side means that there is a camp on the other side. Let's look at those other examples. Because it was blocked off on this side, that means that there was a camp on the other side. This wasn't blocked off, that means that there wasn't a camp on this side. This is a blocked off tile, that means that there's a camp. We know that there's at least one more camp because it has to have our spider cavern in it, so that means that hitting this blockade on the other side of it, which you can see right up through here, is where our spider cavern is going to be, and I know that we can run through there. Here is our camp. Now you'll notice that's in a different orientation, right? The braziers and the pillars are on the top side of this tile. You'll just want to look out for them, right? They'll always be the brightest glowing things because they're little fire pits. There's a lot of things that you can intuit at this point. Because this is our 5th tile, and this is 5B, this being our camp, this is 6B. Our camp has to have the spider cavern in it because we haven't found it in the first 2 camps. And there's one other thing that you can intuit, which is there's a very good chance that our spider force is going to connect to the Flayer jungle. And I'll just go ahead and run over there and show you and then explain the logic. First off, I'm running on the inside of the turn here. The reason why I'm running off the inside of the turn here is because I know that there are no other camps in the spider forest, so the map will never block me off from running in that direction. It only blocks you if there's a camp on the other side. Since we know our camp is here and there is no camp over here, this will not be blocked. When I come running up, I go back over to my left side, and we get a very interesting connection point here. First off, this one's very cool. This one is going to connect to our Great Marsh. This is a super interesting tile combo. This one connects to our Great Marsh. So this is a very weird circumstance here. There's actually so many weird circumstances. We're gonna go ahead and pause. You might be asking yourself, Mac, you just told me that there can't be any other camps at this point. Why is it that there's a camp here and a camp here? Let's remember the orientation of the tiles. This is tile 6A. This is tile 6B. There can't be a camp on this side that is a spider forest camp, because the spider forest can never be 3 tiles wide. This has to be the Great Marsh, because after we explore up here, we know that this is the Flayer jungle. So this is actually the end of the Great Marsh. This is tile 6 of the Great Marsh, and tile 6 of the spider forest. So when I get to halfway between the 2 points, right here, so between this tile and this tile, you'll notice that we're in the Great Marsh. This is super interesting. I didn't see this before. It's actually pretty rare to get a connection point like this. Back to the point I was going to make, which is a second pretty rare setup to get, which is that our tile 6 of the spider forest connects to tile 1 of the Flayer jungle. If you are going to connect to the Flayer jungle on tile 6, it will always be a straight path. So if you get to the 6th tile and you're able to run straight, that means you are entering the Flayer jungle, and it should hit right around now. There you go. So we're in the Flayer jungle now. It's even cooler than just attaching right here. We actually have an even more interesting connection point, which is why it's actually very important to learn the different shapes of the camp layouts so that you could identify this yourself. But just to recap, this had to be the Great Marsh because Spider Forest can't be 3 tiles wide. This has to be the Flayer jungle because our 6th tile allows you to run forward. If you're able to run forward at all, it has to connect to something. Normally, if it was a dead end, this would be rounded out and you would have a very weird ending shape of your river. It would kind of like peter off. It would kind of look a little bit like a crook. But because we can run straight, and if you notice, this is the third slight U-bend, big bush camp opening tile. This is very, very consistent on our map. But let's go running over to tile 6B, where we knew our camp was. This one's more difficult to explain. The camp is always going to be down here on this type of tile. This tile where you go straight into it, the camp is going to be down here past these little walls. The interesting part is that this camp is actually almost the exact same as a camp if you were to enter from this way. Typically, there would be a little bit of an opening here. You have this wall, then you have a second wall, and you would know that you could leave out the top. But here's your spider cavern. When you check up to the top here, you'll notice that there was an exit from this camp. So this camp has 2 exits. This has to be the Flayer jungle if it's connecting to a new area. Why do we know that? So even without seeing the rest of the map that we saw, remember this one fact. All the way back down here, we connected to the Great Marsh. The Great Marsh is only 6 tiles long. The Great Marsh can't wrap up and around the spider forest and connect over to here, right? The Great Marsh can only be 2 tiles long or 2 tiles wide. The spider forest can only be 2 tiles wide. The marsh couldn't have wrapped up into here. This always has to be the Flayer jungle because we're connecting on the 6th tile and we already have identified where the Great Marsh is. So you connect through here, your camps can connect together, and this is what we got right here. This is a really cool example where the entrance of one camp actually connects to the exit of another camp. And for speedrunning, this is kind of like the best case scenario that you could get. So we've skipped the Great Marsh. We do not have to run through the Great Marsh. We never have to go through it. We know we're in the Flayer jungle. I'm gonna explain how I run through the Flayer jungle and just like a couple tips that you can use to save yourself some time. And the first one is going to be this right here. This camp, and I'll go ahead and show you it, is kind of like a Y-shaped camp. You have your swampy pit over here. This isn't always going to be your swampy pit waypoint area, but when you see the swampy pit, you know that the waypoint is gonna be somewhere over here because the waypoint is always on the same tile as the swampy pit. I would call this one a fake camp. What do I mean by fake camp? It's a camp that doesn't have the Gidbin in it or the Flayer dungeon, which are the only things that we really care about, right? We want to go get the dagger for Ormus so we can get a ring, and we also want to get into the Flayer dungeon to go get the organ. I know that this is a fake camp because of this wall right here. This stone wall with this torch right here, one of the easiest to identify tile features in Act 3, means that this is a fake camp. Meaning the Gidbin will not be there, the Flayer dungeon will not be there. This torch was right here on this Y-shaped tile. That means that the Gidbin and the Flayer dungeon are on this tile. So just remember that. If the torch is over here, it's fake. If the torch is over here, it's real. But because you saw the swampy pit, you'll know that your waypoint is up here at the top of the Y, so you want to go grab that. And then we're going to keep running through the Flayer jungle. Again, the 2 braziers as well as the 2 pillars here mark the camp. We don't need to go running down. We know that this is the spider forest. We know that it always goes up towards the top right. Everything leads up to the top right. So we're going to go run this way. And we're going to try to be on the left side. And we're going to come running up here. Oh no. Oh no. We have a blockade. So this one's a little bit harder to explain. Basically, when you see this tile that has the little island right here with the trees in it, don't be on the left side. There's no other way for me to describe it. You just have to know that you want to go on the right side. That one just sucks. You're gonna run into some dead ends every once in a while. But you typically, again, want to try to get over to the left side. So just to recap what tile we're on. This is tile 1, this is tile 1A, this is tile 1B. This is tile 2. The cool thing to remember about the Flayer jungle is that it's always going to attach to the Kurost, right? The end of it always attaches to the Kurost on the 6th tile. So at this point, you really don't have to worry about counting tiles or knowing which tile is which, but it's good practice to keep counting. Tile 1, tile 2, tile 3. So let's go up to tile 3. We're on the left side. We have a bridge here, little tree, bridge here. If you have this set up in your river, bridge and then bridge basically parallel with one another, there is always a camp on the other side of the bridge. And that's what we get right here. So here's our camp. You leave your town portal there just to be able to be super efficient and fast. I come running in. A few things to note. I'm just gonna wait for these demons to die. Interesting thing to note, this tile can sometimes have your waypoint on it. It will only have the waypoint on it if it's the swampy pit. It'll only be the swampy pit if there's a bridge right here connecting. So because that's not there, this little alcove does not have our waypoint in it. That's like pretty nitpicky speedrunner tech, but just remember that as well. Swampy pit always has a bridge that leads to it over a waterway. And if you're coming into a camp that looks like this and you have water and you don't have a bridge, it's not the swampy pit. It's not your waypoint and it has nothing else in it. You don't need to explore it at all. So we're coming up to tile 4. Again, you don't need to know what tile it is, but keep counting just to practice. You'll see that we have the same setup. We have a bridge, we got a tree, and we got another bridge. That means that we have another camp. What do we know about this camp? Since there's only ever 3 camps in an area, this has to have the Gid bin in it, and it has to have the Flayer dungeon. Flayer dungeon and the Gid bin are always in the same camp. This is the 3rd camp. It has to be there. If it wasn't there, your game's broken and you should get a refund. But here you go. You have your Gid bin and you have your Flayer dungeon. Now, you may want to run all the way in here right now. If you're trying to speedrun the game, a more efficient way of doing it is actually just to leave a town portal right here and then finish exploring the Flayer jungle and go get the next waypoint. Because if you run all the way down to level 3 of the Flayer dungeon, you have to run all the way back out of the Flayer dungeon, and that sucks. Now, like I said before, you would typically want to be on the left side, right? You would want to be on the left side because you don't want to get blocked off on the right side. Because we know there are no more camps, again, we can run the most efficient way because the map won't block us because it won't be pointing us towards a camp. So we can actually run on the inside right side of this curve. We'll run up to here. We'll get waylaid by a bunch of carvers here. Wait for them to die on our thorns. Get wrecked. Then we keep going. So again, on the inside of the curve, because we know there are no more camps to interrupt us, it's never going to stop us at this point. You want to stay on the inside curve. After you find your 3rd camp in the Flayer jungle, run on the inside curve of whatever part of the river you're on. And then here you go. You're always going to have your big, what is this guy? Like Storm Tree Thunder Smash? His name's just Storm Tree. You're always going to have your Storm Tree Elite here. This super unique. And you're always going to have your entrance to the lower Kurast. There you go. Pretty simple. You just ran through the entirety of the Flayer jungle and you did it with ease. You were able to intuit a lot of smart decisions based off of what the game was telling you. And by simply counting to 6 and remembering that each map area, 2 tiles wide, 6 tiles long, Great Marsh is always either parallel with or before the Flayer jungle. The Flayer jungle will always exit to lower Kurast, and you don't have to worry about the tiles anymore at that point. You just want to stay on the left side until you find your 3rd camp, and then you want to run on the inside of the curve. Ta-da! You now know how to run through the jungles as fast as a speedrunner, or at least pretty close. Now, there is a lot more nuance. Like I said, you can memorize a lot of tiles. You can learn a lot of things based off of the stones that are on the ground or where certain torches are or whether or not a statue is covered in web placed in a certain part of the camp. You don't really need to worry about that. Just remember to count your tiles. Always make sure to check your camp to figure out which camp you're at. Once you have found 2 camps, you know what your 3rd camp is going to be. It's either going to be the waypoint, the necessary thing you need to go to, or an empty camp. So if you already found either the waypoint or say the spider cavern, you don't have to run into the 3rd camp. You just keep exploring, just keep counting tiles, and you'll find your way here. If people really liked this, I can explain how to run through the rest of the Act 3 maps. I've already done a pretty deep breakdown of how to run through the Durance maps, but there's obviously like really small things that you can learn about Lower Kurast Bazaar, the Upper Kurast, as well as the sewers, which are useful for a lot of different people. But if people are interested, I can go through that as well. I can even try to do a more in-depth version of this exact same video. Again, so many people have already done it. I think the only thing that people necessarily haven't done is just walking through, explaining the process and kind of breaking it down as it goes. Trying to use like quite literally simpler terms, because we kind of get lost in the sauce a lot, and it's difficult to just show people a bunch of diagrams and have them actually conceptualize and actually digest the information. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm always up for teaching more if I can. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.